The Crow and the Pitcher. In a spell of dry weather, when the birds could find very little to drink, a thirsty crow found a pitcher with a little water in it. But the pitcher was high and had a narrow neck, and no matter how hard he tried, the crow could not reach the water. The poor thing felt as if he must die of thirst. Then an idea came to him. Picking up some small pebbles, he dropped them into the pitcher one by one. With each pebble, the water rose a little higher and higher, until, at last, it was near enough so that he could drink. In a pinch, a good use of our wits may help us out. The Ants and the Grasshopper. One bright day in late autumn, a family of ants were bustling about in the warm sunshine, drying out grain that they had stored up during the summer, when a starving grasshopper, his fiddle under his arm, came and humbly begged for a bite to eat. "What?" cried the ants in surprise. "Haven't you stored anything away for the winter? What in the world were you doing all last summer?" "I didn't have time to store up all my food," whined the grasshopper. "I was so busy making music that, before I knew it, the summer had gone." The ants shrugged their shoulders in disgust. "Making music, were you?" they cried. "Very well. Now dance!" And they turned their backs on the grasshopper and went on with their work. There is a time for work and a time for play. The Donkey Carrying the Image. A sacred image was being carried to the temple. It was mounted on a donkey, adorned with garlands and gorgeous trappings, and a grand procession of priests and pages followed it through the streets. As the donkey walked along, the people bowed their head in reverence or fell to their knees, and the donkey thought the honor was being paid to him. With his head full of this foolish idea, he became so puffed up with pride and vanity that he halted and started to bray loudly. But in the midst of his song, his driver guessed what the donkey had gotten into his head, and he began to beat him mercilessly with a stick. "Go along with you, you stupid ass," he cried. "The honor is not meant for you, but the image you are carrying. Do not try and take the credit to yourself that is due to others." A Raven and a Swan. A raven, which you know is black as coal, was envious of the swan, because her feathers were as white as the purest snow. The foolish bird got the idea that if he lived like a swan, swimming and diving all day long, and eating the weeds and plants that grow in the water, his feathers would turn white like the swan's. So he left his home in the woods and fields and flew down to live on the lakes and in the marshes. But though he washed and washed all day long, almost drowning himself at it, his feathers remained as black as ever. And, as the water reeds he ate did not agree with him, he got thinner and thinner and thinner, and at last he died. A change of habits will not alter nature. The Two Goats. Two goats, frisking gaily on the rocky steps of a mountain valley, chanced to meet, one on each side of a deep chasm through which poured a mighty mountain torrent. The trunk of a fallen tree formed the only means of crossing the chasm, and on it not even two squirrels could get past each other in safety. The narrowest path would be made to to the bravest tremble. Not so our goats. Their pride would not permit them to stand aside for the other. One set her foot on the log, and the other did likewise. In the middle, they met with horn to horn. Neither would give any way, and so they both fell, only to be swept away by the roaring torrent below. It is better to yield than to come to misfortune through stubbornness. The donkey and the load of salt. A merchant, driving his donkey homeward from the seashore with a heavy load of salt, came to a river crossed by a shallow ford. They had crossed the river many times before without accident, but this time the donkey slipped and fell when halfway over. And when the merchant had got him to his feet, much of the salt had melted away. Delighted to find how much lighter his burden had become, the ass finished the journey very gaily. The next day, the merchant went for another load of salt. On the way home, the donkey, remembering what had happened at the fjord, purposely let himself fall into the water, and again got rid of most of his burden. The angry merchant immediately turned about and drove the ass back to the seashore, where he loaded him up with 2 great baskets of sponges. At the fjord, the ass again tumbled over, but when he scrambled to his feet, it was a very disconsolate ass that dragged himself homeward under a load 10 times heavier than before. The same measures will not suit all circumstances. The lion and the gnat. "Away with you, vile insect," said a lion angrily to a gnat that was buzzing around his head. But the gnat was not in the least disturbed. "Do you think," he said spitefully to the lion, "that I am afraid of you because they call you king?" The next instant he flew at the lion and stung him sharply on the nose. Mad with rage, the lion struck fiercely at the gnat, but only succeeded in tearing himself with his claws. Again and again the gnat stung at the lion, who now was roaring terribly. At last, worn out with rage, and covered with wounds that his own teeth and claws had made, the lion gave up the fight. The gnat buzzed away to tell the whole world about his victory, but instead, he flew straight into a spider's web. And there, he who had defeated the king of beasts came to a miserable end, the prey of a little spider. The least of our enemies is often the most feared, and pride over a success should not throw us off our guard. The leap at Rhodes. A certain man who visited foreign lands could talk of little when he returned to his home, except the wonderful adventures he had met and the great deeds he had done abroad. One of the feats that he told about was a leap he had made in a city called Rhodes. That leap was so great, he said, that no other man could leap anywhere near the distance. A great many persons in Rhodes had seen him do it, and would prove that what he had told was true. "No need of witnesses," said one of the hearers. "Suppose the city in Rhodes. Now, show us how far you can jump." Deeds count, not boasting words. The Rooster and the Jewel. A rooster was busily scratching and scraping about to find something to eat for himself and his family, when he happened to turn up a precious jewel that had been lost by its owner. "Aha!" said the rooster. "No doubt you are very costly, and he who lost you would give me a great deal to find you. But as for me, I would choose a single grain of barley corn before all the jewels in the world." Precious things are without value to those who cannot prize them. The Monkey and the Camel. At a great celebration in honor of King Lion, the monkey was asked to dance for his company. His dancing was very clever indeed, and the animals were all highly pleased with his grace and lightness. The praise that was showered on the monkey made the camel envious. He was very sure that he could dance quite as well as the monkey, if not better. So he pushed his way into the crowd and was gathered around the monkey, and rising on his hind legs, began to dance. But the big hulking camel made himself very ridiculous, and he kicked out his naughty legs and twisted his long, clumsy neck. Besides, the animals found it hard to keep their toes from under his heavy, heavy hoofs. At last, when one of his feet came within an inch of King Lion's nose, the animals were so disgusted that they set upon the camel in rage and drove him out of the desert. Shortly afterward, refreshments, consisting mostly of the camel's hump and ribs, were served to the company. Do not try to ape your betters. The Wild Boar and the Fox. A wild boar was sharpening his tusks busily against a stump of a tree when a fox happened by. Now, the fox was always looking for a chance to make fun of his neighbors, so he made a great show of looking anxiously about in fear of some hidden enemy. But the boar kept right at his work. "Why are you doing that?" asked the fox at last with a grin. "There isn't any danger that I can see." "True enough," replied the boar. "But when danger does come, there will not be a time for such work as this. My weapons will have to be ready for use then, or I shall suffer for it." Preparedness for war is the best guarantee for peace. The Donkey, the Fox, and the Lion. A donkey and a fox had become close comrades, and were constantly in each other's company. While the donkey cropped a fresh bit of greens, the fox would devour a chicken for the neighboring farmyard for a bit of cheese flicked from the dairy. One day, the pair unexpectedly met a lion. The donkey was very much frightened, but the fox calmed his fears. "I will talk to him," he said. So the fox walked boldly up to the lion. "Your Highness," he said in an undertone, so that the donkey could not hear him, "I've got a fine scheme in my head. If you promise not to hurt me, I will lead that foolish creature yonder into a pit where he can't get out, and you can feast at your pleasure." The lion agreed, and the fox returned to the donkey. "I made him promise not to hurt us," said the fox. "But come, I know a good place to hide till he is gone." And so the fox led the donkey into a deep pit. But when the lion saw the donkey was his for the taking, he first all struck down the traitorous fox. Traitors may expect treachery.